Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. Today I'll recap a war action film called The Last Frontier. Spoilers incoming. The movie begins as Russian soldiers are training as if they are in a battle. Despite all the struggles they experience as the water hinders them from fighting accurately, no one backs down as they do their job. No one leaves their post despite the dangers of losing their lives during the duration of the war. In Podolsk, a training ground of artillery and infant school, the comrade Colonel Strelbitsky talks to one of his officers as they observe Cadet Lavrov. They watched Lavrov's abilities on the battlefield while he used the artillery. When Comrade Colonel Strelbitsky is finally satisfied with the training outcome, he orders his men to turn off the water hose, and soldiers may now hit the final course before they can stop and rest. The operator maneuvers a rope holder as shooting targets slowly arise from their position. The soldier gets giddy as they set an eye on the target, as every one of them professes their willingness to outsmart their opponents. However, Lavrov's abilities are way too advanced than those of his comrades. Lavrov positions his eyes on his machine and amazingly shuts down the target with one blow. The training ends as Lavrov's comrades admire his valorous behavior and exceptional skills. While the female cadets, Shishkina and Masha, attend to the needs of those who are wounded, especially Cadet Kachenko. After the training has ended, the soldiers form a line to welcome Comrade Colonel Strelbitsky, who aggressively approaches their way. Lavrov introduces himself first, then the succeeding cadets follow. Comrade Colonel Strelbitsky confronts Lavrov and his team, asks, and explains the outcome of their sudden approach, but one of the members justifies their performance during the training. Comrade Colonel then reminds them that their mistake could result in massive damage and the deaths of numerous soldiers during the Nazi war. Lavrov and Dmitry seriously talk about their competition to win over Masha's love. The man who makes her heart beats with affection wins. Food distribution happens while the soldiers collect their food from the person in charge. Moments later, a platoon marches yards away from where they eat. This movement catches the attention of everyone as they now focus their attention on the arrival of these soldiers. In Podolsk artillery shul, Masha is in a deep sleep when Lavrov sneaks out and puts a flower in her hand. Suddenly, the comrade doctor arrives, and Masha wakes up in her presence. The comrade doctor informs Masha that she hears some footsteps in the office, but the latter is clueless. When the comrade doctor notices the flower in her hands, she asks Masha who is the person behind it, but Masha does not know. Surprisingly, while the comrade doctor tells how unlucky Masha's fate will be, they hear sudden clicking sounds of the flasks. The comrade doctor roams her eyes and sees a foot peeking near the cabinet. Instead of further confrontation, the comrade doctor leaves and tells Masha to lock the office. After the comrade doctor's departure, Masha goes to the cabinet where the unknown person is. Masha then removes her head cover before she slowly walks into his way before confronting the intruder. Masha goes in his direction and sees the sneaky Lavrov. Lavrov explains that it wasn't him but instead of the flask's fault. Masha attacks his lips to his surprise as she grabs his head and lip locks him. Masha showers Lavrov's face with kisses as the man is stunned by her stunts. Dmitry confronts Lavrov upon his arrival at their dormitory. He tells him of becoming unfair despite their agreement. Dmitry gets off his bed and faces the sneaky Lavrov. While they converse, the tension starts to rise as Dmitry's anger rises and radiates through his words. Lavrov apologizes for turning his back on his words, but Dmitry does not take this situation lightly. Dmitry's anger bursts out when Lavrov narrates Marha's action of kissing him. Lavrov attacks Dmitry first as he cannot contain his remarks. The two punch each other, and they wake their comrades with their noise. While their comrades stop them from fighting, the comrade battery commander arrives and stops the ongoing commotion. The comrade battery commander mocks the bloody Lavrov and Dmitry when no one speaks when he asks them if the problem is happening. He warns Lavrov and Dmitry not to attend the training if his assumption is incorrect. When the comrade battery commander dismisses them and decides to turn his back to leave, Dmitry tells him that he and Lavrov fight with each other. Dmitry asks for punishment as stated in the rules and regulations of the school. The commander gives Dmitry a 5-day arrest, while Lavrov might receive expulsion due to his misconduct during yesterday's training. In Warschauer Chaussee, a Russian fighter jet roams around in this area to patrol the territory. Using the radio, Starchik informs his comrades about the arrival of numerous Nazi armies around Warsaw Highway outside of Yukov. When the Nazis notice the presence of the fighter jet, one of the soldiers in charge of the tank shoots the airplane. In Hauptquartier Moscow, the Russian officials prepare to stop the German army from reaching their territory. Despite being outnumbered and underdog in terms of warfare materials, the army must do something to oppose them. The lieutenant general with his underlings exits his office quickly while he instructs them of their plan. They have to hold back their enemies and deploy Podolsk's military schools until a high command sends in reserves. The officials of the Russian military team strategize where and when their deployment will be. The lieutenant general informs the attendees of the plan that they will execute before the arrival of the Nazis. To overthrow the 300 tanks of the Nazis, they must use artilleries to stop them. Strelbitsky is ordered to release and take charge of this order for 5 to 6 days till they receive the high command backup. Strelbitsky goes back to Podolsk military school. Pakomov welcomes Masha and her friend Shishkina as they arrive at an organized party happening inside the vicinity of Podolsk's military school. Masha's eyes never rest to scan the area as if she is looking for someone. Suddenly, Lavrov's friend, Nikitin, rushes in her direction as he informs Masha about his arrest when he fought with Dmitry. Masha walks out upon hearing the news. On the other hand, Pakomov proposes marriage to Shishkina when they have their alone time, and the lady is about to agree, but they hear a horn sound enveloping the area. The sound of the horn alarms the infantry cadets as they all immediately go to their posts. Strelbitsky informs the cadets about the arrival of Nazis near Moscow and informs them of their duty to protect Ilkinsky frontier. Strelbitsky tells them to defend the area for about a week till the special forces revive and reinforcements arrive. On the other hand, Lavrov, who is in his cell, tries listening to the orders delivered by Strelbitsky. Lavrov encourages Dmitry to sneak out to help their comrades who will be deployed for war. Masha arrives at the prison, and he calls for Lavrov's attention. When Lavrov hears her voice, he reminds her of being careful during the war. He promised to find her when their detention ended in 5 days. Strelbitsky gathers the officials in the school to disseminate the tasks during their deployment. He assigns Mamchich to assemble his men and equipment quickly and then leave. Surprisingly, Strelbitsky then orders Alyeshkin to put Lavrov in the vanguard. Alyeshkin goes to the prison and gives back Dmitry and Lavrov's patches. Masha quickly carries and transfers equipment to the military truck. While they are all busy with their task, the comrade doctor cries as she reminds her son, Nikitin, to be careful during their deployment. She kisses her son goodbye before she hugs him tightly. After Nikitin departs with his mom, he informs Masha about Lavrov's deployment in Yukhnov. Masha slams her things to Nikitin and runs immediately to Lavrov's location upon hearing the news. Fortunately, Masha can see Lavrov leaving while they are already riding the truck that will send them to Yukhnov. At the same time, Dmitry watches Masha's reaction while Lavrov leaves. Comrade Lieutenant Alyeshkin orders the cadets' relatives to stop blocking the driveway as they are in an emergency. He calmly instructed everyone to get out of the way as they rushed to leave. The relatives of the cadets are in a panic as this sudden deployment alarms them all, knowing that their children are in danger. Meanwhile, the lieutenant's wife, Lisa, arrives with their baby. She is teary-eyed, knowing that her Alyeshkin will be sent to protect them from war. While Alyeshkin's team is on their way to their post, aerial strikes from the Nazis happen. They are showered by gunshots that kill and harm cadets. Immediately, Alyeshkin orders those who survived to leave their vehicle as they are being targeted from the air. Then, the cadets rush to the military truck to save the ammo and their equipment from burning. They helped each other to put out the fire despite the dangers of being attacked. Kachenko, on the other hand, sacrifices himself and drives one of the military trucks, which is about to explode. Surprisingly, he survived the explosion. However, Bugatov still got wounded from the ambush. Everybody tries to help to treat his wounds. Unfortunately, Bugatov did not make it on the front line. Lavrov's team encounters 4 civilians on their way to Yukhnov. Their commander, Lieutenant Mamchich, exits the truck to check on what they are about to transport. Mamchich finds these men suspicious and alarms his cadets to be in position. However, it's another ambush for Russia, Captain Storchik and his men. But when the sound of a horse is heard, Lavrov sees his childhood friend Yerohin, so the tension goes down. Captain Storchik orders his men to back off. At the same time, Lavrov and Yerohin hug each other, and Storchik and Mamchich build an alliance to defeat the Nazis. The Russian army observes the arrival of the Nazis in their territory. As Nazis get near their post, the official commands his men to be in position and prepare for an ambush using the artillery. Upon reaching the exact point where the Russian army planned to attack, they bombed the army tanks to disarm them immediately. There is a massive exchange of bullets between the two parties, shot by shot, bullet after bullet. The place where the encounter happens is covered with screams of panic and orders from both officials. Lavrov did not follow any orders, instead, he made his way to attack. However, he faced a German soldier one-on-one. No one moved and backed down. But when the German was about to disarm Lavrov, Captain Rosakov saved him from being harmed. After that, Captain Rosakov is questioned about Lavrov's behavior during the encounter. Lavrov is demoted as an ammo carrier. And the rest of the team checks the information of the dead German soldiers they recovered. In the Alyansky frontier, the comrade colonel orders his men to dig around the area to build a line of defense. One of his men complains of being overworked and criticizes the colonel's plan, but the latter only gets mad because of frustration. This is the only resort as they are outnumbered and dogged by the German Nazi army. Smirnov arrives at the place where the locals worked to create the escape route near the riverbank. The colonel and the other high-ranked officials talk about the strategies they made as the situation gets worse. Smirnov then tells the colonel to take charge of all the operations in Alyansky. The battlefield witnesses the cries of pain and willingness to defeat their enemies. The bombing and shootout continue as Russians and Germans try to win over the war. The Russians prepare to release their best equipment while the Germans provide more tanks to attack their opponents. Finally, Russian tanks arrive to assist artillery and compete with the Nazis. Masha is treating the wounded cadets on the battlefield and asks one of her patients about Lavrov's whereabouts. The cadet informs her that he is just around, together with Storchak's men. Meanwhile, Lavrov is in charge of the artillery and targets the Germans who are escaping. Unfortunately, when Lavrov brought down one tricycle, one of the Germans was able to bomb them. When Lavrov wakes up, Masha is the one who is with him. Masha cannot contain her tears as she sees Lavrov suffering from hardcore wounds in his body. In Line 1 defense, all the soldiers rest as they wait for their enemies to pass through. Pakomov entertains himself as he plays with Valsaham's glasses while sleeping. Suddenly, they hear the arrival of jet fighters nearing their place, and all the cadets wake up from their sleep. The jet fighters dropped barrels and explosives, and the Russians panicked and hid to save themselves. The explosions had killed numerous Russians. The Germans did not stop and dropped another batch of bombs in the area. Those who survived helped the wounded as they tried to save them. But more German troops arrived as tanks now occupied the area. Those who are hiding attack them, as explosions and bombing, and shooting between the parties occurs once more. More damage between the Russians and Germans, but no one gives up. Continuous gunshots will dictate who will dominate the war. The Russians are determined to kill the invaders. Germans are persevering to conquer Russia. Dmitry finds the recovering Lavrov, and the two reconnect and celebrate their reunion. But their happiness is not complete, as Lavrov tells Dmitry about the death of their comrades. They also witnessed the arrival of Germans near their quarters, so they reported the occurrence to Smirnov. Smirnov once more ordered another batch of cadets that they would use to secure the place and face the Germans. On the other hand, Storchak and Yerohin spied on the German quarters. Moments later, the place got bombed, and the Russians celebrated. Storchak retrieves the German official and brings him to their quarters. Dmitry and Lavrov bid goodbye as deployment from different areas happened. As if it's their last chance to see each other, they bid farewell and hugged each other. Another set of German armies arrived, which caused another stir among Russian troops. Russians were outnumbered and lacked tanks and resources. Now, it's not just a battle of guns and bombs but also hand-to-hand combat between them. Russians are devastated as they lose their loved ones in the battle. In Bolshaya Shubinka, more attacks arrived as the encounter between Russian and German continuously fostered. The endless gunshots eliminate soldiers from both parties, and the deaths continuously increase as the battle continues. The Germans became more violent and even burned the Russians alive, but the Russians fought back. The comrade doctor asks the comrade colonel about the war happening as she questions the unmentioned sacrifices of the cadets deployed on the front line. She cries her heart out for the suffering of these 3,500 young kids of becoming the shield and the sacrificial lamb to fight against the Germans. The colonel tells them that this is their last resort, to fight and let those survivors fight back with all means. Dmitri comes back but is covered with his comrades' blood. Lavrov informs him that none of their comrades gets back alive from their occupied post. The soldiers in the area are silenced by their sorrow and mourning due to the death of their comrades. Despite being wounded, Lavrov decided to go back to the battlefield to help his comrades face the Germans, but Masha stopped him from doing so. Lavrov never listened and still joins them in the war. The two kiss as if it'll be their last romance with each other, as there's no assurance of survival. The survivors are once more deployed to be on the battlefield. More Germans arrive at the area where the Russians are waiting. The soldiers work in unity as camaraderie and teamwork allow them to attack efficiently and accurately. The Russians attack the tanks to kill them while Smirnov and the rest of the officials observe the battlefield. Meanwhile, Lavrov asks the lieutenant to take charge and maneuver the artillery to take down the Germans. At the same time, Dmitri gets shot in front of Masha as he checks on her. Before he dies, he confesses his love to Masha and the latter cries in sorrow as she witnesses her friend's death. The movie ends when Lavrov and Alyeshkin are in tandem to bring down the German tanks. This will be their final blow. Lavrov must aim for the tank's weakest spot. While Masha, on the other hand, secures the place where Lavrov and Alyeshkin hide. However, Masha is shot in her shoulder. This distracts Alyeshkin and Lavrov, and bombs are thrown in their area. Despite these occurrences, Lavrov successfully shoots the German tank, and at the same time, they explode as they valiantly die in saving their country. This ended the war between Russia and Germany. The survivors joined together and were welcomed by the high commands. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.